Hey, Chad here from Grayscale Gorilla, and in this video, I wanted to see if we can do this Dale Chihuly style fabric-y flower thing. If you're not familiar with Dale's work, he does fantastic glass sculptures, really iconic stuff, and they kind of look like melting flowers made out of glass. I want to see if we can do something very similar, but make it out of fabric using Cinema 4D, parametric objects, and our fabric materials. Let's jump in. Okay. I have a cone. I have a plane with many, many subdivisions, and the cone is about a foot wide. I do need to subdivide the heck out of this cone for it to simulate properly, so let's do that. But first, I need to create a bunch of copies of it. So I'm just going to hit holding down Control, and I'm just dragging until we get 10 copies. All right, so there's our 10 cones, and I think that's probably fine in terms of the width and whatnot. That'll be good for this. Let's really increase the subdivisions to something high, like 225, and let's increase the height segments to something like that. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is grab a cloner, drag all these things into the cloner, change our cloner from grid mode to linear. Make sure that we have maybe 10 clones for this. For right now, it's fine. Let's change our Y position to 0 and our X to 90 and our Z to 90 in terms of scale, so that we get this like cascading stepping into our little cones. The next thing we need to do is move our plane down, because we want our plane to really just pin a lot of these verts down at the bottom of our cone flower. So cool, that's looking good. Let's jump back into our cone. We're gonna maybe increase the top radius or the bottom radius, and there we go. And the next thing I'm gonna do is maybe bring a little bit of scale to them. So maybe I want to do like 105. And remember, we do not want this sort of stair-steppy bottom. Let's actually bring this down to 102. And we're going to offset the Y just to kind of like flatten out that bottom, because we want all these verts to be pinned to this plane. Okay, that's looking good. Let's go ahead and increase the subdivisions even more. Maybe we want to do 300 to really get a cool, like, high fidelity sim. Cool. Let's just make these look more square. All right, there we go. Clone selected. Let's grab tags. Let's grab simulation. Let's grab cloth. And let's jump into the surface tab of the cloth. Change the bendiness to 20. Something like that is good. Mass, all right, that's fine. We'll leave that at default. For our plane, this is the thing that's going to be pinning the bottom of our flower to make sure all these different pieces don't go flying away. With the plane selected, let's go to simulation. Let's grab a connector. Let's leave that at default. Let's also grab a simulation cloth for that plane as well. For the cloth, let's change the mass to 20, something big, 9500 maybe. Bendiness is going to be 0. We don't want this to move, so we're going to turn the dampening up to 100%. Okay, so if we hit go on this right now, it would all just fall through the floor, because we need to disable gravity. So let's go under Edit Scene Settings. Let's go to Simulation, under Scene, change our gravity to 0. All right, so if we hit go on this, it's just going to do a bunch of nothing. So let's add some turbulence. Let's go to MoGraph. No, we want to go Simulate Forces, Turbulence. For turbulence, let's set the strength to like 1, the scale to like 20, frequency we'll leave it default. And let's make sure for our plane that we are not using that turbulence. So under forces on our plane, we're going to throw that under exclude. Okay, so we really want this thing to look cool. Let's go ahead and maybe add 2 more clones. So we'll go 12. And we're going to need to maybe make these not be quite so small, or the scale. So let's go 95, 95. Cool. All right. Actually, that looks kind of interesting, because we have kind of like this, like, you know, step down effect, which I kind of like. Let's make sure everything there is looking good. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit play on this, and let's extend our timeline to maybe 500, and we're going to see what this looks like. All right, so we're getting something kind of interesting, but it's all kind of falling down a little too much. It's getting this interesting crumple effect, but it's not quite what I want. So I am going to go ahead and drop a gravity in there. So we're going to go same thing, simulate forces, gravity. Let's pull it off to the side. We want it to go up, so I'm just going to rotate it 180 degrees, and we'll bring the gravity force down to maybe 10. And let's also turn that off of our plane as well. So drag it in there so the plane is not affected by that. Let's go ahead and simulate this and see what we get. Okay, so we got some centerpieces that are literally flying away. So let's jump back to 0 and fix that really easily by hopefully going back to the beginning, making sure that, okay, cool. So it looks like we need to just move this like this. I'd rather have these go below so that these get caught. And maybe that's going to be 0.05. And let's go ahead and really try to find that sweet spot, which is just going to be 0.1. No, it's going to be like 0.18, somewhere in there. Okay, so that should be enough to capture all of those verts and pin them down. And I'm just going to take a chance. We're just going to simulate this, and we're going to actually cache it out. So we're going to cache to an Alembic file. So I'm going to grab that cloner tag, and we're going to go under surface, or sorry, under cache. And we're going to click external. We want this to be an external Alembic file, not attached to my scene file. It's going to be much faster to save, much faster for autosave and whatnot. So if we were to say cache scene, it's going to ask me to store this somewhere. So let's go ahead and just name this cloth test and hit enter. And it's going to go ahead and start to simulate. Okay, so once it's done caching to an Alembic file, we can now play it back real time and kind of see what we get. All right, I can already tell this is probably maybe a bit too heavy on the turbulence, but it is a really interesting kind of look, and I think it's going to look really cool when it's rendered out. So for rendering this out, it's a camera just kind of pointed right above it with a pretty long lens. I think I'm using like a, what have I got on here? Let's see, 100mm lens. Dramatic lighting, just an area light kind of set off to the side. You can kind of see it here. I've got an HDRI that's sort of providing a little bit of a fill light. But I wanted to keep it kind of dramatic like this. So you can see I've already brought in some fabric materials from Grayscale Gorilla Studio, which is our standalone application for Windows and PC that allow you to instant access to all of our assets and be able to send them directly into Cinema, Houdini, Blender, and Unreal. And so with Studio open, I'm going to hit connect, which is just going to create a live connection to Cinema 4D so I can easily send stuff over there. I've already got quite a few fabric materials from Studio already in my scene, but we're going to find one more and bring it in just to see what that's like. So let's go ahead and dock this off to the right, and I'll put Cinema into the middle. This is kind of how I like to work. I plan on doing a tutorial on how I set this up, so if you want to see that, let me know in the comments. All right, so let's grab a new material. Let's grab something from Cotton, and let's find something that's somewhat interesting to look at. Maybe this crazy blue and red one. So let's download that. And because I have the camera selected in my scene and I have it set so Studio is going to apply it to whatever I have selected, I'm going to go ahead and deselect that and just select one of my cones and go ahead and send that in. You can see it applies it to that cone right off the bat, and it should show up in our render. Perfect. Now I know that mapping is not correct. I know it needs to be 5 tiles in U and 1 in V, so let's go ahead and change that. All right, cool. That's looking good. Oh, hey, future chat here, I forgot to mention this thicken object right here. So I'm actually creating a little bit of thickness on all of these different pieces of cloth, and I'm doing that parametrically right now via this thicken object. So you just got to drop a thicken object in, drag your cloner that's been cached out underneath it, and then just change the thickness to whatever you want. I got it somewhat thick, but you know, I needed it to be a little bit noticeable. But anyway, back to the video. Now I'm just going to start randomly selecting and applying some of these other materials that I already have in here to this object. And let's maybe grab one for the cherry melange, which is one of my favorites. Maybe this broken stripe, and maybe this brown for our last one. And let's make sure they're all set to the correct tiles for UV. So we're going to change them all to 5 on U. And there you go. That one on the outside is really crazy. I think maybe we went too far. I'm going to grab a different one, something a little bit more subtle. So let's grab this guy right here. We're going to send this one in, and let's go ahead and delete that first tag so that we just see it, what we're looking for, and let's change the mapping on that too. Yeah, this is actually, ooh, I like this one. I like it's got this like interesting like little line pattern, which is really cool. All right, so that's kind of it. Then I just set up a couple of different camera angles, and I use Signal to kind of move the camera around a little bit. So we jump into the top, and then we've got this one that's kind of like a 3/4, which looks really pretty. But let's jump back into our top angle here. All right, so that's kind of it. Like getting a really simple sort of Dale Chihuly flower fabric simulation really, really fast in Cinema, and then using Grayscale Gorilla fabric materials, which we have a ton. We have linens, we have denims, we have cottons, we have so many right here in Studio. And if you aren't a Plus member yet, you can sign up and get Studio right now and get access to 50 free assets and play around with it, see what you think. And if you end up doing your own simulation like this, you know, tag us. We want to see what you're doing. All right, guys, that's it for this one. I'll see you next time.